Welcome back to the channel. In this video I'm going to start getting on with the rear tubs and the boot floor. So a little bit of time lapse now, clearing away that little bit and adding in the section that was missing because of the fuel filler, and then I'll be cracking on with the rest of it. Right, so I've managed to get that lip welded on. That's going to be for the floor to sit onto. I'm going to drill some holes through to the inner arch or whatever, inner quarter panel, just in case any water ever gets in there so it can get through. And then obviously we'll be wax oiling that. This will all be linished back all around here. I'm going to weld the inside of this lip and the inside of there, so that I can create a little bit of a curve as well. And then we can look at building a floor. All I've got to do on this side is unpick that off, and then we're pretty much ready to start weighing up the floor. I've left around about 12 mil all the way around. That needs tidying up, that's dipping down a little bit, so I need to get a lump hammer to knock that up, and I need to not square off, it's not the right word, well I suppose square off, do something with these just to add a little bit of support to where that chassis used to end, so that that can then meet up with the floor. So what I'll probably do is go up and put a 45 at the top so that it comes under the floor a little bit, just to add a little bit of strength. And then once the floor's in fact I don't know whether to do it before the floor's in. I do need to cut a section of this out, or instead of cutting a section out, do I bridge from there down to the new floor and the chassis rail? I'll get it on the floor and think about it. That's for the rollover. And then at some point I'm gonna have to think of a rear towing eye, but that I suppose could just drop down. Right, so here's where I'm up to after spending an eternity sending up that last video. All that's unpicked now. Got that little bit sorted, including the holes there. Don't think I showed them, which will be once that's sealed off and I've got a little hole in it to match that side, just in case any water does get in there, it'll drip down through here and out. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to make a floor up to around about the chassis leg area there, which will come across, tuck in a piece onto that. It will be trimmed to the wheel tub when that happens. So I've just got it roughed in now. I folded these bits over. I do need to chop them off because it needs to just rise up a little bit. I will have to take a little bit off it as well, but the fit's quite nice. Just had to shave it towards the edges because the rear panel does just bow out ever so slightly. And then basically what I'm going to do, or what I'm contemplating doing now, is actually folding the floor up to meet the chassis leg, up to maybe about here, and integrating that into the chassis leg. I'm not too sure. Alright, so I've got this floor roughed in place, and I've just trimmed it off around the chassis rail so I'm at the correct height now, so that we can go across there or do whatever I do, sort of cubby hole way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clamp a piece of box section underneath this bend here, and I'm actually going to fold that round after I've drilled them holes, and underneath I'll put a box section on the top here. I'm going to cut that on that line, and then I'm going to fold that back under the floor as well, so we'll have a nice sort of double section of a floor there, which should be good and strong, which again is going to be right in between the chassis rails at the back, just by the subframe mount, so it just adds that little bit of extra there. I've not decided where to trim this yet, but I can leave that overhanging because I can cut it from the top, but I did want to come over to this point here because from there it drops in, so it just means that the floor should look neater. I've got a bead roll there, which I think I'm going to try and continue on, and then I'll probably put a couple of angles up to the chassis rails, but I need to have a little think about how I want to design that, because that's going to be obviously what you see when you look in the boot. That section there all the way up to here is going to be where the fuel tank's going to be. It's not going to be a massive tank, but it'll be big enough. I might even have it stepped over the chassis legs. It'll have to be removable, obviously, to get to the strut tops, but that's not a massive issue. I could even access the strut tops from the other side, to be fair. Just use a big hole saw on there and have it on a bolt-on cover, which I might actually do. If I do a 4-inch hole there, a 3-inch hole, and have a plate on bolts, that could allow me access in, and then I can leave the inside alone completely. Been out for a while this evening, and I've made up the driver's side wheel tub. It just wants squeezing down a tiny bit. Then what I'm going to do is where this infill section here is, obviously the floor's going to sit up to there. I'm going to plate the inside up to the bottom of the chassis rail with 2mm. So I'll run it up to that, which is like the turret. I'll spot weld it to that chassis rail that I've put in, and then I'll just tap it over, and obviously that's 1mm. I'll just tap over this section and I'll do a seam weld down there and up there, and then up there, front and back, and spot weld it to the tub. So that'll add plenty of strength for 2mm. And I'll do the same thing when I do that side as well. So I'll go from that round the inside, and I'm going to do a similar design to what I've done there on the front. So the way I've done it is, obviously it's flat on that side, so I'll do a seam weld down there. I may even stitch it, but I think a seam weld will probably be stronger. And obviously it'd be better for any water penetration, so I'll seam weld down there. Sorry about my finger. And then I've put the bend on this side so it looks neat on that side, because that side can just have seam sealer on it. This side can be seam sealed on the inside, on the wheel tub side, but inside the boot it'll just have a tiny little bit, so it can look quite tidy. Then I've got the floor I've chopped off ready, just need to build the next side. So tomorrow I'll make the other tub for this side. They're very similar, they're not exactly the same, but they're very similar in size. I'll just follow this profile, so they're not going to match symmetrically perfectly, but if you remember, the old one came to here, so it will be much closer than it was. And then I've still got to do something with that section there, or to be honest with you, I'm considering just dressing up the spot welds, saying that I need to cut out that, so I'll probably have to cover that, but I'll weigh that up afterwards. The floor's coming on though, the floor's coming round, so where I did the extension piece, obviously I've tapped that round. There's a little bit at the bottom which I'll probably chop off. The floor comes to about here, and then it'll have to have a little piece on that side, and again a little piece on that side. I've gone off the sinking the battery down just because of, I want the floor to be as flat as I can, so when it comes down there and then across, I don't want anything sticking down off the floor. So I'll just bang the battery maybe in front of the fuel tank here, something like that. I'll build a nice frame for it. I was just having a little play with a piece of scrap, and I'm actually quite happy with what I've ended up with. I need to use a flat disc and just get rid of the slightly rough edges, because I've only roughed it in. But I've put a bead round it, which has actually turned out really neat. I'm unsure whether to leave it like that. I'm going to have to spot weld it on there, because it's not so nice behind it, so I don't want to butt up to it. So I'll spot weld it as the original panel was. All the way around it can be spot welded. I'm just not 100% sure whether, because I've got the bead in it similar to what that is, whether to cut the inside out or not. Need to make a decision on that. What are your thoughts? I think I should cut the centre out so it's a bit more similar to that side, which is what I was kind of going for copy wise. Let me know in the comments what you think, whether I should cut it out or just leave it as a full panel. Obviously it's stronger as a panel, but I don't think it needs much strength there.